Hi, Soman.
How's your Threads break going? I see that you have
You just saw
officially
that.
you
No,
have
so yeah, that's interesting because we just uploaded an episode about is having a public profile worth it? And on the day that uploads, I'm like, I'm spending way too much time on Threads, and I have 2 weeks left on this deadline for this book, and I can feel myself giving my energy to places where it shouldn't be. You only have so much gas in the tank, as I always say. So I'm deciding, I deleted it off my phone. I'm focused on the work. I'm still obviously posting on Instagram and TikTok because that's part of it. But I feel like there's much more engagement or much more requirement of engagement on my part on Threads.
Mhm.
So it feels like an easy trim for right now while I need to focus on other things.
My theory always was that you kind of became the queen of Threads, like you
No,
mastered Threads. Like I feel like you got the widest possible audience, had the most possible impact, and I feel like you hit the peak of what Threads can be. So it's like mic drop, goodbye. Like I feel like that's the
that's
only logical
very
solution.
that's very kind of you to say. And there are several authors I can think of who could join Threads and with one post be like, I have 100,000 followers.
It doesn't matter. You were there, you did it, you're out, and I'm predicting you don't go back.
We'll see. We'll see. I remember when I deleted Twitter, I expected it to be more painful. And then it was like, I feel such a lightness.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows?
Well, we'll see.
Hi, I'm Victoria Aveyard, author of The Red Queen and the Realmbreaker series.
And I'm Soman Shinani, author of the School for Good and Evil series, and welcome to Plot Twist, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the biggest swings in our careers, Victoria's Tempest, her very first novel for adults, an epic pirate fantasy.
And Soman's Young World, a red-hot young adult political thriller. Each week, we go behind the curtain of our creative process, and we give you our hot takes on thorny issues in publishing and entertainment. We answer your mailbag questions, plus we pitch plot twists we want to see in real life.
And today's very hot topic: should authors want to make money?
It's weird this is controversial.
And we're going to have a lot to say. And now on to our first segment, where each week we come up with a word or phrase that encapsulates the essence of our week on and off the page. Our theme of the week. Do you want me to go first?
I do want you to go first.
This week? Well, last week I was burned out, which is not particularly inspiring. But this week, interestingly, it's a very different theme because the theme is writing retreat. And, last week I think the burnout was partially because of the fear of having to start this whole new part of the fantasy book. Like I had worked so hard to do that part one. And part one ends like most part ones do, with us entering this brand new universe. And so now I had to write that new universe. And I think the sort of hurdle of getting started and having to create so much world building again, and the pressure of putting, story and character and world all together was slowing me down. But all I had to do was get started. So once I set down the first sentence and started chipping away at the fog in my head, sculpting like the colorful Play-Doh, that first day passed, I got a 500 words. And from there, all the fatigue and burnout honestly cleared. And it felt like, okay, I'm back on the bike. I'm back in what I know how to do, what I did for 10 years writing School for Good and Evil. And so the day started to feel almost like a writing retreat, super lonely because my partner's out on the farm, but also really productive. It felt like my apartment became almost like this hotel that I enclosed myself in, and I was getting my 500 words a day, and I was playing tennis in the morning, and I was lifting in the afternoons, and I was writing in between and at night. And then my reward at the end of every evening was watching a couple episodes of Hacks, which I absolutely adore. And I was looking for very little input at this point because I wanted the real world to feel almost less exciting than the fantasy one I was building. And by input, I mean just outside experiences. I was almost trying to make life as boring as possible. And sometimes I think you need that when you're forming a brand new world, because you need your creative energy to almost find that fantasy world more stimulating and exciting than, the real world, which is why I often think really good fantasy writers come from very sort of far off, small rural communities. Young World was different. It was set in this world. And so for the last 3 years, really my solution to everything that I found problematic in this world was put into that book. Young World is my philosophy on where I think the world should go in order to solve all our problems. And so because of that, I had to be hyper engaged with this world. I was constantly reading headlines, constantly reading stories, constantly listening to podcasts. I was like in the world during those 3 years. But now I feel like with this book, I get to retreat. And I think almost subconsciously, I planned, given what's happening in this world, that I would be writing this book at this time where I can kind of disassociate and be like, see ya, you know?
Oh, Soman, all I think is that sounds so nice. So, this is why I wanted you to go first, because my theme is in the groove, and I'm very much in my version of your retreat, where I'm just editing Tempest in my normal work hours. And I am so, so jealous of what you just described, of being able to just like shut off the rest of your life.
Well, your life is much more exciting. This is the problem.
It's not exciting, Soman. But to be able to just devote all thought to writing and keeping the machine running. Like you're almost like an astronaut who's like, I'm going to eat the food in the package and I'm going to go back to the control panel. Everything, you're almost like a monk in some way. Like everything has been directed towards the production of this one thing. And I do this in my drafts, like when I get towards the end, when I'm feeling, like there are too many things pulling me in too many different directions, I find myself fantasizing about like freezing time and being able to just pour into the work without any of my exterior responsibilities, which, to be fair, I have very few compared to most authors. Like I don't have a day job. I don't have children. I don't know how people are doing this with kids hanging off of them. Our producer right now is just telling us his kids got hand, foot, and mouth. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that would destroy your whole like schedule for the day. And 100%. I'm a very rigid scheduled person. So I do fantasize about locking myself in a hotel room for a week and just doing the work. But part of me knows, I think like I would miss my husband and my dog. And I also know I would feel guilty dipping out of my life because I have all of these eldest daughter terrible guilt moments that I deal with. But I do start every day with my sort of lofty goals of staying on schedule. And I inevitably lose my focus, or I dilly-dally, and something that's supposed to take 5 minutes takes an hour, or something that would only take 5 minutes, I procrastinate for an hour. But having, appointments and meetings and all of the admin of being a writer or an event or some sort of other exterior obligation, they all get in the way. And I keep telling myself I need to get in the practice of writing more, of potentially working on 2 things at once, because I feel very nervous about, and we've talked about this before, I feel nervous that I'm not putting out enough stuff. But I just don't see myself being able to do it so long as my work remains like Monday to Friday, 5-ish hours of pure writing time every day with no other things involved. So I don't know. My theme of the week is I'm jealous of Soman.
Which is ridiculous, because I feel like if you compared the amount we each wrote, like on a given year, you still write more. I think everyone who listens to this podcast,
I got to write shorter books.
It's just amazed by your productivity, the ability to, I think maybe you might write less hours ultimately somehow, but I just think that you're able to lock in a way that is so kind of amazing in terms of what you produce. I do think you should be able to do the 3-day thing every once in a while, not even a full week, just you have like so many beautiful hotels in Santa Monica. Just like check into the Ambrose for 3 days.
I would feel so guilty.
Why?
I would feel so guilty doing it. I
he would love it.
Yeah, he would never make me feel guilty for wanting to or for needing to. I have to go sit in a hotel room and finish and just motor to the end. That would be totally fine. I would feel guilty. I just carry that.
I'm going to tell him that I'm coming, and we're just going to get like rooms on opposite end of the hall. And yeah, it'll be perfect.
We'll just do the podcast, but over breakfast.
This is going to happen.
Anyway, what are our goals?
Our next segment is goals for the week. And every week we look back at the prior week's goals and grade ourselves. So how did we do on last week's goals? Why don't you go first on this one?
My goals were working through the edits. I'm very much on pace. I'm working through my Excel sheet. I've got my green, yellow, my red light. I can see the path ahead of me. I had a few events that I was doing, and I've done 2 of the 3 now. They've all gone very, very well. And the authors I was able to be in conversation with were wonderful. Readers were wonderful. All good. So that's 2 A's. That's 2 A's.
Mm.
And then the third goal I had was sort of to get the ball rolling on the what comes next for our production schedule, essentially. Conversation with my agent now that we know sort of the forward path for Tempest. I did not do this. However, it's not my fault. She's on vacation.
Perfect. That's
So-
that's a NA or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Okay. So how about your goals for next week?
Goals for next week. My goals for next week, I have one big brand new scene in the next sequence of Tempest. Not one scene that like, oh, I didn't write and left it out of the first draft. Like this is an added scene that sort of came together, not just while we were talking about edits. It was something I had in the back of my mind and thought, I don't think we have the space for it. And then when the notes came, I was like, what about this idea? Would this fix the issue we're having here? And both my editors were like, oh, yes, it would. We would love that. So that's coming up and I'm hoping to tackle that over the next week. And I've been kind of, I wonder if you do this too, where you start thinking about it and then your brain starts going and start like the lines, the dialogue, the moments, it all starts coming together in your head and you're like, stop.
Yep.
We're not in front of a computer. We're not in front of a keyboard. Don't let the horses run yet. So I've been sort of resisting thinking about it too much so I can get it all out on the page properly with the same enthusiasm. Otherwise, I'm moving through my edits, making sure everything is smooth. This is a very straightforward part of my process, very linear. I have been slacking on my visual content, so I'm trying to, the next time I have like a face on, batch stuff for TikTok and Instagram whenever I look presentable. And I'm co-hosting a baby shower this weekend, which should be low-key and lots of fun, but of course I'm stressing out about it and hoping that everything works out. And then an extra goal, and this is because yesterday my mom said, Victoria, I really like your podcast. I have one note. And I was like, oh God, Mom, what's your note? And she goes, you need to stop interrupting Soman.
What are you talking about? You never interrupt me.
I do. And I know I do. And I know this is just because I come from a background where we just talk over each other. And if you aren't interrupting someone, you're not going to speak.
Oh.
And that's the way it is in my household too.
I love it. I've never noticed it at all. Maybe because also I grew up in an Indian household and no one has time for anything. So I just feel like we don't even notice.
It's not an insulting thing. It's not meant to be an insulting thing. It's more of an impulse thing. But yeah, my goal is to maybe be a little more aware that I've been interrupting you.
I'm telling you, I'd never noticed. Tell your mom that I love whatever's happening. Okay, let's go to, I guess, my goals.
Yeah,
from
what
last
are your
week.
goals?
So, okay, number one was end discussion on the Young World cover and lock it, which I thought was in danger because we kept going back and forth. And all of a sudden, at one point, it almost completely fell apart again. And we were going to change things. And finally, I was just like, can we just make this one adjustment and see if it solves everything? And I got the final draft last night at about 9:00. And I was like, it's done. Like, it's done. Like,
oh my
don't
God.
touch it. Don't. This is it. We locked it. So it took about 40 something drafts. It took more. It took 11 months to get a cover for Young World.
I've heard some cover stories before. That is quite the process.
It took 11 months. Do you want to see it? No one has seen it. Okay, I'm going to text it to you right now.
Ooh.
It's loaded up. And it's coming to you. You can open it live on camera.
You're hearing all of our sound effects. Sorry, I have a wristband thing on my phone, like a Gen Zer, so you might hear some beads clinking. Okay, I'm waiting. I'm ready.
Okay. I just sent it to you.
Oh, I had Do Not Disturb on. I'm so stupid. Oh!
It's cool now.
That's so good. I hope there's not like a reflection in my eyes of it.
That would be hilarious if someone.
So good, Soman.
It took 11 months.
You found the color.
It took 11 months.
And I love the blurb.
Yeah. So everyone will see it at some point soon, but you had to be the first. No one else has seen it. I don't even think I've sent it to my agent yet.
I have one note. I think your name should be bigger.
Welcome to having too many letters in the name.
It's fantastic. I love it. It's so striking.
It took a long time.
I can't wait for it to be on my shelf.
Oh my God. And I can't wait to share it with everybody who's listening. But second goal for last week was to ease back into part 2 of fantasy novel, which yes, it's happening.
Great.
Number 3 was get tennis and training back on track. Yes, but I'm still a little sluggish from London. I just miss it, I think. And the last goal was to kind of restore my inspiration and remind myself that I'm happy being here in America and in St. Louis rather than, on the British streets. And I'm just not there yet.
You got to detox a little bit, unfortunately.
Okay, so my goals for this week, number one is 3,000 words of part 2 of the fantasy book. So that's about 500 words a day for about 6 days of the week. I write 7 days, but one day always, you know how it is, one day always gets trashed. Second day is mentally prepare for the Young World proof to come back. Remember, I made over 600 design and copy edits. That's going to come back next week, and we'll see what it looks like. Number 3 is that cover I just showed you is now going to become the cover of the advanced reader's version of Young World. So now we have to go through that process. And my fourth goal is so different. I kind of want to make a new friend in St. Louis. I feel like I've been here for nearly 2 years. I have some, friends that I've made, but I think I need to be a little more proactive about meeting new people.
That's so wholesome.
I just don't know how to do it yet. So if you're listening to this and you're in St. Louis and you want to be my friend and you're not weird.
Soman, you just, the Venn diagram of listens to our podcast and isn't weird. It's a circle.
And lives in the loo. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, when we are back, speaking of weird, we're gonna answer a particularly weird question in industry nonsense. See you in a second. And we are back with the segment you've all been waiting for, Industry Nonsense, where we dive into thorny issues in art and publishing that other people are often afraid to touch, or in this case, even say. Because our question for this week is, should authors want to make money? And I feel like you need to take us on a little rant for us to understand where this question comes from.
It is a rant. This is way less structured also because this is less inspired by a current conversation, more instead of just like an ongoing frustration that I know we all share. And it's not just in the publishing spaces. It's not just writers. It's a lot of artists across the board. But we work in publishing. We're focusing on publishing. So should authors want to make money, otherwise known as sort of the ideal of the starving artist? This idea that if you want to be compensated for your creative labor, you aren't in it for the right reasons. Obviously, Soman and I think that is a crock of shit. And we're going to rant about it. So we have a very, very easy answer. Our answer is yes, authors should want to make money. Like, it's okay to want your art to be successful, to give you success, especially because success for your art means more art gets to be produced. So first and foremost, this sort of idea that artists should not be properly compensated is inherently pretty exclusionary. You're not ensuring that only the best and most passionate people make art. You're just ensuring that only the privileged people make art. And while there is already so much privilege in our field, you and I are always like, oh, wow, didn't know that person had a trust fund. This has been discussed a lot across both our platforms. Having wealth or having a safety net always makes producing art, especially art with no guarantees like writing a novel, easier. It's just one less obstacle in a journey that is riddled with obstacles. It doesn't mean you aren't talented. It doesn't mean you aren't also working hard. It doesn't mean there isn't also a struggle and a requirement for grit and determination. But if you have that financial background, if you have that safety net, you're not also worrying about putting food on the table at the same time. You're not worried about making sure your kids are okay at the same time. You're not worried about going to a day job for a lot of people. So this image of the starving artist has existed forever. I do think there is a bit of a modern layer that comes into it with this rising sense of entitlement that a lot of us have experienced from a minority of the book space, be it, entitlement to our time, our attention, or in the case of piracy, which goes into the financial conversation, our work. I am continuously shocked by the things that are demanded of authors or demanded of me, most especially by someone who says I should be grateful that they are pirating my book and refusing to pay me and the dozens of other people who have worked on my books for our labor. And we are now hearing this again in the generative AI conversation where people are like, you should be grateful that generative AI is inspiring people to use things from your work that you cannot profit on. The piracy conversation is its own can of worms, has a lot of nuance. I do think it is a bit much to ask authors to be grateful for theft, especially in our changing landscape where we have to grapple with the threat of generative AI, the continuously expanding piracy market. I do wonder, there are a lot of large accounts on TikTok, on Instagram, that gleefully link to pirated books or pirated audiobooks. They advertise where to find these things and how to download them. And I just think, do you guys even like us? Like, do you want us to keep doing what we're doing? do you care about the artist that you're stealing from on such a massive scale? You know, it's one thing to have one person be like, I'm going to go find the PDF. And another thing to have someone make a video that then gets tens of thousands of views of like, here's where to download the PDF. It's just mind blowing. I think there's also this layer of not really seeing what we do as artists as a talent or a skill, at least not in the same way that people view like a professional athlete or an actor or a singer. A lot of people look at books and think, I could just do that if I had the time. And I guarantee most of you absolutely could not. But there is this thought of, I could do it if. And so it almost creates this, well, you're not doing anything special, so it doesn't matter if I take it from you. There also is the reversal where there's, from what I understand, sort of an inherent jealousy of what we have been able to accomplish. And it is a dream that we get to do this. So we get to live this dream while another person with the same dream does not reach the same heights for whatever reason. And that I can empathize with a bit more, but it still feeds this idea of, well, I'm doing it for the love of the game. How dare you do it for more? Which I think harms everybody in our art spaces and kind of drives us toward a reality where the only already privileged get to make art and get to take the risk of making art. At the end of the day, we love what we do. We are baffled we get to do this for a living. But we are both people who very much need to keep selling books, to keep writing books, especially at the speed and quality that we have set. And that's another more modern element. Like, we don't have the Medici patrons funding our lives so we can sculpt the David. There's nothing like that anymore. So every book we sell means we get to be in the groove, in the retreat, writing new worlds and building new stories.
All of these are such important points, to the point of, I feel like you've covered so many things that I want to dig in on that one thing that really resonated with me, of this idea of, the inherent jealousy, or as I see it, to me, it's frustration. The feeling that every human has a creative shadow, all of us, and that we need to express somehow, whether it's making art or drinking alcohol and then, letting it loose on unsuspecting patrons in the bar. But we see a violinist in Carnegie Hall and we have to accept we can't play violin, so therefore we can't be up there. We see Timothée Chalamet or Margot Robbie or Cate Blanchett, and we're like, okay, we're not that charismatic or beautiful. There's no way to delude ourselves that we could do that. We see Da Vinci's art. No, we couldn't do that. We can't even draw a stick figure. But a book, we can write a book because everyone, has the capacity to text their sentences and their thoughts. So the leap to being a professional novelist is not that far. I've had people at least 3 or 4 times in my life, absolutely sort of like, really good looking friends who have very sort of corporate-esque jobs or jobs in completely, white collar spaces, be like, oh, I've really thought my calling is as a fantasy novelist, as if it's like just something that like they could switch and do the next day.
Not to be rude, but are they real estate agents?
One of them. So it's this idea of, it just seems easy, which is why you've had it. I've gotten it. Every single novelist that we know has got it. Someone has come to us and said, I have a great idea for a novel. Will you help me write it? Or who can I hire to write it? Can I pay you to write it? Because they think the seed of the idea makes you a novelist. And the rest of it is just the plumbing. Because to them, the writing is something that they do every day in their emails and texting. Therefore, to write a novel doesn't require necessarily any craft or skill.
They're not writing their own emails anymore, by the way.
We're going to get to that in a second, because I think that's part of this slippery slope, which is, I'm thinking of a TikTok this week that I saw where a guy is just standing there in his, tight muscle clothes showing off. And it says, the caption says, if I wasn't conventionally attractive, I'd be so strange. And in parentheses, it says, I love Star Wars and I collect rocks. And something about it really stuck with me, because even though it's so stupid, the deeper point of it was actually quite profound, which was he wants value. And a lot of people want value now publicly for simply existing, right? Ugh. He likes Star Wars. He collects rocks. He's decent, looking. He's got a pulse, groundbreaking. And therefore, he wants recognition for the absolute base, lowest threshold of humanity, versus a skill or doing something with that life, right? The life itself becomes worthy of fame and fortune.
It's the worst kind of pick me, where it's pick me for no reason, for a totally normal thing. Oh my God, this thing that billions of people like, I also like. But I'm
100%.
also attractive.
It's an OnlyFans without actually showing any, like no longer, before you had to show something. Now you don't have to show your personality, your art, or even your anything. It's nothing. It's just existing. And I think that's very, very common in terms of how we're starting to think. We want a career simply for being ourselves versus actually doing anything. And it sort of speaks to this idea of, yes, there's universal basic income, but the idea of like income for nothing. And that leads to this slippery slope where the effort of making something, the absolute intensity and insanity of writing a big novel like we know and what we're documenting for you, and you're seeing how hard it is devalued because one can achieve fame and fortune by just, dworking or putting on makeup.
Dworking.
And
It's twerking.
Twerking with
It's
the
not
D.
called dworking.
No, it's dworking. Men are doing girls
What is
twerking.
dworking?
It's dworking with the D instead of the. Anyway, you'll see.
Whoa.
Go to TikTok. You'll see.
Whoa, no, I'm not, because it sounds like your algorithm's all over the place. I don't want to do that to mine. Wait, I thought you just, because a couple weeks ago you said oogie boogie instead of heebie-jeebies, and so many people have loved that. I thought you were just getting twerking wrong.
Everyone's going to be commenting, being either telling you, how do you not know what twerking is, or telling me, well, how the hell did you end up on the twerking algorithm? And both comments are perfectly valid. This is why AI is such a threat. Because it validates this kind of thinking that we are owed the right to skip all the steps, to write a book simply by having an idea, to make a movie simply by just entering I want to make a movie about this, and the movie appears. There's an entitlement to the fruits of labor coming versus, seeing being human as a gift to actually do labor. One other thing, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, is, and this just from the way I work and everything that we've done, any money I've ever made, for the most part, goes back into the work. So for School for Good and Evil, I didn't get that big in advance because, it wasn't a big book for Harper at the time. It did not have, the best release date. I was going to really go on only a 3-city tour, and it was just kind of limp into the middle of the list. But I took every dollar of that advance money and I put it towards getting the book out to readers. I hired a great book publicist named Megan Beattie. I added 5 cities to my tour on my own. I built the now infamous SG website, which was sort of a hot fire mess for 10 years. I had more ARCs printed. I invested every dollar back in the book because I believed in it. And because of that, more early readers read it, and the rest is kind of history. So I think the money matters, but more than that, the reader matters. And if the reader wants good stuff and not just AI dreck, and they don't want books to become what movie studios are now, which is just recycled garbage over and over and the same story over and over again, and repackaged fan fiction, which we'll do in another episode, then you need to buy a book with pride, because otherwise the days of good work are going to end quite quickly.
Yes, and we talk about this a lot, the whole idea that you sort of vote with your dollar. And that doesn't just mean politically. It does mean, you put your money into places and authors that you want to support. We go round and round on negativity is the thing that fuels a lot of the algorithm, a lot of the visual mediums that we're in. But negativity also creates buzz, and it gives something more reach. And so there's always that pushback of just don't even talk about the things you don't like, because you don't want to give it more attention. Talk in the same way with the same passion about what you do like. So, put the money behind the work that you do like, put the energy behind the work that you do like, behind the things that you do want to support. And the response should just be absence to the other things. That idea you were talking about making money off your books goes right back into the apparatus. You are not unique in that. I know, especially in the indie space, so much of the structure is this book is earning so that I can advertise the one after it. That's not so, at least in my experience. It depends on the author on the trad side. And you really did put in, and still put in, a level of work that I do not see from so many other authors in terms of the photo shoots, the content, the swag, the tours. So much of your stuff is self-funded. And I know there's sort of this assumption that it's, oh, you're a big book at a big publisher. And that's just not the case for you. And a lot of people, myself included, have been lucky enough where we don't have to be that strategic and think about our money in that way.
I think it's because growing up, I always wanted to be in business somehow, and to be able to direct a movie. Honestly, that was my dream, right? It was to be in the movie space where I could control sort of an entire world at one time. So writing the book to me is just almost the first step. It's the essence of the whole thing. But from there, I can come up with all the different ways to create something bigger around it. In the case of School for Good and Evil, it was to create sort of this fantasy world around it by building this absolutely ultra interactive website that no other series had at the time. I actually thought it was like a better version of Pottermore at that period. And then with Young World, it's to create sort of the movement that's going to be around Young World with a lot of cool sort of interactive things as you guys will see. And so to me, it's part of building this entire thing that no publisher is going to be able to come fully on board with for obvious reasons. And so to me, that's part of the economics of how I build everything in, which is the book is part of this bigger ambition that I'm going for. And so when this question comes up of, should authors make money? The book is available for free. Can I just grab it? Even if you're not thinking about the author, even if you're not thinking about, all that sort of stuff, I also wonder about this idea of okay, I'm just going to rip this piece of art. And I wonder if deep down inside, do you think they question conscience-wise? No.
And I think there's a lot of justification. And again, I think the piracy thing might be its own episode because there's so many different layers to so much nuance, especially when we're talking about piracy in our domestic markets, because that's where it really affects us, obviously. We are published first in the United States. When we're talking about piracy that harms us, that's usually the piracy location that we're talking about. And a lot of the statistics show piracy happens the most in the first world. So a lot of the arguments kind of fall flat when you're talking. You're like, well, actually, statistically, that's not what we're talking about. But yeah, it's messy. And I just think I come back to being told you're wrong for feeling like you need to be paid for your work. I don't understand how, even if you're very against, art should be free, everyone should be able to access these things. I understand the philosophy there. But I don't understand being angry when an artist, especially someone who their livelihood is based on their art, is like, hey, I do need to get paid.
And that to me, what's so interesting about it is we're talking about really a minority set of readers because we're also incredibly privileged to have these readers who delight in supporting our work and are the first ones to buy, all the editions. And all this stuff and to support because they're so fully aware that by supporting the work, that means there might potentially not just be future work in general, but also future work in that series, right? So let's say everybody pirates.
Oh God, that's another whole thing.
Red Queen. Everyone can pirate Red Queen. There's not going to be a sequel to Red Queen because it didn't make any money. So the only way to get more of what you want, is to actually support it.
I think it was Maggie Stiefvater who did an actual experiment with a pirate, and she wrote a blog about it. I'm not sure if it's still up, but it's worth Googling. But basically did an experiment that proved piracy was much, much larger than we assume and was taking a large, large chunk of her sales away. And I think it was her, had also had a series canceled at that point because there wasn't enough enthusiasm. And so she was like, well, I'm going to show that this is part of it. Because a lot of people will say, it's not part of it. No, it's not, because they just don't want to take that responsibility on.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think it's something that we'll have to also keep our eye on because as AI gets more sophisticated, I think piracy and AI are going to work together to become more sophisticated.
I agree. And I think a lot of us, these conversations happen all the time behind the scenes. We are all very, very concerned about how do we maintain ownership of our own IP. And that is not a thought I ever assumed would be part of this process, part of this career is feeling like I don't get to own something I create. And now AI is threatening that. I think we're in a weird space with a lot of the reskinned fan fiction where suddenly it's like, it's been happening to billion-dollar IPs. Okay, that's one thing. What happens when it's not a billion-dollar IP? What happens when it's a working writer? What happens when it's someone who can't say no?
How about this? I was thinking about this last night as I was falling asleep. Very soon, within the next 12 months, anyone on this earth can go to a generative AI visual movie making platform and say, I would like a movie of Groundbreaker. I would like a movie of...
Oh, I see them on TikTok all the time that are trailers for these books. And I'm just like...
And you're going to get a full movie. You're going to get a full movie.
This is tough.
In one click. And so...
And they
It's good.
look scary.
Yeah. And they could only get better.
I
That's the
know.
other thing. So, book to film adaptations are going to change also because pretty soon anyone's going to be able to make a book to film adaptation of anything. So anyway, lots of dystopian scenarios. We live in a strange time. And we're gonna leave it there, but we're gonna be back in a second with some more of your questions. And we are back with the Reader Mailbag, where we answer some of your favorite questions from the week. Our mailbag is full of your questions, and we're trying to keep up. So let's start with one from Claire. I'm so excited by your podcast. I was curious if you have ever used sensitivity or authenticity readers when writing. If so, when do they come into play during the process? Does a publishing house ever pay for them, or does it always come out of your own pocket? How do sensitivity readers work with a fantasy world or a contemporary one? Do you want to go first? What's your thought?
Sure. Just thinking back with Red Queen, authenticity and sensitivity reads. Well, first of all, that was my debut. And when I sold that, I had no idea that was even a thing. And it didn't become more of a practice until later on in my publishing career. I think an element, especially on the trad side, especially in the middle of a series, something that comes in is the production schedule and how fast we can do things. And so that was something with Realmbreaker, I was very much on top of like, we need sensitivity reads. I want to have authenticity reads on this project. And we had to make those requests very, very early because once things get going, they really get going and dates get locked. And suddenly you're in a space where there's just not time. And you can get a sensitivity read on the copy edits, but then it's like, well, what if something's really flawed? That's a risk you're always going to run. I did have some really wonderful readers who added these great moments of realism and weight to a very unreal world in Realmbreaker, and that's just on the fantasy side experience. I haven't written contemporary, so that's not something I can weigh in on. We're still in the edits on Tempest. That's a conversation again, schedules permitting. Don't get me started on the production side stuff again. I do think you want to be aware of the intent of the work you've written. And I think something, because a lot of people approach authenticity reads or sensitivity reads as something that's going to be something to get defensive over, something to be afraid of. And this is my same advice for when you're approaching editorial notes of anyway. They're meant to aid the work. They're not meant to tear it down. There's no one who's coming in with the intent to hurt you. And I think that helps in approaching the notes. Everyone is here to make the book the best book it can be. In terms of who pays, I don't know if there's like a standard. With Realmbreaker, my publisher and my agency were able to procure people. And that was not something I was part of the finances on. But that varies. And it depends on the book, depends on the publisher, depends on where you are in the process.
It's so funny. I have such a controversial, what's new, opinion on this one.
Let me get my button.
For myself, I don't use them because I think they warp the read. I think they tend to be overly cautious in order to obviously find things that justify their existence. That's their job. And so, it's controversial, but it's how I feel. So for School for Good and Evil, I didn't let anyone ever see any of those books other than my editor before they were published. And it's fantasy, and I wanted it to be my fantasy. And so I didn't want another soul commenting on it, but that relied on me having absolute trust in my editor, Tony Marquis, to be able to, and there were certainly things that she had issue with that then we worked through. But I trusted sort of my life and perspective to her. Young World is different because it's set in this world. So it did need reads because there's so many characters from different countries and things like that. So I trusted the school and library folks at the publisher to highlight any issues. And then wherever I was uncertain, I just found friends of that cultural background who I could send passages to and things like that and get their feedback without feeling like somebody's particular line of work rested on being able to identify things that needed to be changed.
That's a really important point. And I think you and I are of the opinion of you can do anything if you can pull it off. If you didn't pull it off, you're going to get the critiques, you're going to get the pushback, and that's part of making art is you might get it wrong. Obviously, we've all gotten it wrong before. You hope to get it right, or if you get it wrong, you hope to learn.
Absolutely.
So I think that's part of it, and not feeling like sensitivity reads or authenticity reads are a catch-all, are a shield. That's not what it's for. I also, as you were discussing with talking about trust in your editor, I was thinking about Tempest, and I am now working with two editors at the same time, one in the US, one in the UK. And I feel like I have a really, really good backstop. And I feel like we really understand what we're doing here. And I do very much trust their reads as well. So that was something that just sparked for me is, yeah, I do trust their reads and they are of different cultural backgrounds than me. I feel like it's a good spread.
Yep. Our second question is from Kylie. Would you encourage waiting to read other fantasy books of your same setting and niche until after I finish the first draft? Or should I go ahead and start reading? My fear is that reading them will discourage my own writing and feel as though what I'm doing has already been done well enough. But I also feel like it would be good to see what others have done within the genre. What is your take? Such a good question. I have such a simple answer,
You go
which
first.
is I can't read in the genre while I'm writing. It just influences me too much. I've had too many times where early on in School for Good and Evil, where I would try and then find myself writing chapters that felt inspired by it that I would have to throw out because they weren't actually where I wanted to go.
Yep.
So now, whenever I'm writing fantasy, I tend to be reading more adult contemporary or nonfiction or thrillers or stuff like that. And when I'm reading contemporary, I'm reading fantasy.
Yeah, I'm of a similar mind. I have a very difficult time reading within my genre or my subgenre while I'm drafting. I do have some wiggle room if the setting is different. That's usually helpful. But I do tend to gravitate towards dissimilar works while I'm drafting. Not just because I'm afraid it will affect my work, but also because I don't want to get exhausted by the genre and burn out. I do remember when I was first drafting Red Queen, like writing the first draft, the first version of that manuscript before I had a book deal, before I knew this was ever going to be really in the cards. I was living at my parents' house, writing a book at the coffee table, and I picked up Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I read maybe the first 3 chapters, and I realized I had to stop reading it. Not just because, same genre, a lot of the same touchstones, but because the writing was so good, I was being intimidated out of writing my own book. And I just thought, like, damn, why am I even trying? And I knew I could not think that way. So I made myself put it down until after I finished the first draft of Red Queen. It was like my treat for finishing. And then when I realized I was being considered by Lee's own agency when I finished that book, it was just like this great shock and some interesting kismet there. And then in the reversal, there are books that intimidate you out of writing. There are books that inspire you into writing. Midway through the draft of Red Queen, when I was ready to give up on it, I reread Catching Fire, the second Hunger Games book. And it just reminded me of how much I love storytelling and how much I wanted to tell stories myself. And I went right back to the draft and finished it. So
I love this because
thank you, Suzanne.
This reminds me of when an author called me. Their book hadn't been published yet. It was calling me for advice on agents or something like that, and was talking about how their book kind of languished for many years until they read Red Queen, and something about reading Red Queen through drafting completely like inspired them to change direction, fix it,
nice.
and ultimately their book became a massive, and series became a bestseller. So
I know who you're talking about.
yeah, sometimes it happens. So there's no hard and fast rule. You kind of see where you are. I think if you're stuck, sometimes reading the best in a genre, can bring you. But if you're in a good groove, then there's no reason to. Maybe that's
so. Our answer is we have no answer. It's totally subjective. I hope that was helpful.
If you'd like to submit a question to our reader mailbag that we will again botch, you can email it to mail@plottwistpod.net, PLOTTWISTPOD.net. Now, for the last segment that I've been trying to avoid, plot twists we want to see in the real world.
Give me your delusion this week, Soman.
I don't know if I can because I got some bad news this morning.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it? We'll talk later?
I don't know. I don't know whether to talk about it on camera.
Then don't. If you don't know, don't do it.
Let's just say I had a death in the animal family.
No.
At our farm. And the plot twist is I'd like to go back in time and have it not happen. And part of living on a farm is bad things happen. It's just unfortunately the whole thing of it, and it's funny because I was thinking about this with
Someone was it lady?
It was lady. It was lady. It was just
so
unfortunate accident that happened, and it's completely gutted both me and my partner because unfortunately we weren't there to stop it, and it was it was this reminder of how quickly things happen. How one day you're giving your precious animal a hug, and the next day it's gone. And it was the worst thing that I think has ever happened to us individually and together, because that was like our child. This dog that sort of was um, the seed kind of our love, and that tracked our love story together, and was just the most amazing animal in the world. And so it's what's funny is that feeling of how deeply you love something, and I can't even process it at this point. It essentially just shut me down, which is why this podcast has been so nice. It let me compartmentalize
Soman.
for a little bit. But to be able to use creativity and storytelling in your mind to be able to remember all the memories, to for a second think about a plot twist where I could have her back, and all the things. And it's just a reminder of why we make art, is because the feelings that this one dog gave us um, are the feelings ultimately that become the engine for all the other feelings in my life. Feelings I can't even feel right now, because I feel like my whole system shut off. Um, but that's kind of where I am. Sorry to end this one on a downer.
No, I think we should end it there. I'm so sorry.
You
Oh,
know.
I wish I was there to give you a hug. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Soman.
But I think maybe that's both our plot twist for this week. That she's having a grand old time wherever she is, and you know, uh, both you and I are dog lovers, and they're part of our life. And just the experience of getting to love one is enough to have one. So, last little story about Lady. I always told Scott from the day we got her, I said, there's something special about this one. I don't think we'll have her very long. And it reminds me sometimes that that's what it feels like in life and art. Sometimes you get this supernova of something that feels so awesome and intense and beyond life itself, and you just know somewhere deep inside you're not going to have it for very long. So, just a reminder for us to cherish everything um, we have, and that all those feelings we have should be continue to make great art, because that's the only way some of us have to express ourselves. So.
Well, I have no coherent thoughts. I just want to hug you.
But yeah, I was debating saying this on camera, and what I realized is it informed having all those feelings have informed everything I said in the rest of this podcast. So I feel like better to be transparent about everything, because that's part of the
Thanks for making me cry on camera.
But if you guys want to see more of us, you can find us on our socials. We've told you on past episodes, but we'll see you next week. And yeah, life goes on. And thank you all for listening, and thank you for being the safe space always, because you're the only person I've been able to tell so far.
Oh, Soman, I'm so sorry.
All right, we'll see you guys soon.
Bye, guys.